If there is only one thing you need to learn and understand about Magna Carta 1215, it's this. Magna Carta 1215 is the sole peaceful means known to humankind by which the rights of the weakest, most innocent citizens can prevail over a massive, potentially corrupt, and oppressive state power. This is the voice of freedom, Magna Carta 1215 Learning Centre. Welcome to your next lesson with hosts Fitzroy and Carl. Well, g'day folks, how you going? Nice to have you join us on a Monday evening for, well, the long-awaited lesson number 26. It was meant to happen last week, and because I was a bit crook, I apologise to everybody. Happy New Year to you if you are just a Magna Carta viewer and only pop in on a Monday night. I hope your New Year has kicked off okay, and life, the universe, and everything goes well for you in 2023. Going to be an exciting year, and I think common law generally, and let's hope what we discussed plays a great role going forward in over the next, this year and the years ahead, because it's really going to take years and years to get ahead here. But we all know about that. Going to have another interesting show coming up. Well, I hope many interesting shows coming up. But this week particularly, trying to line up a bloke who has some very interesting news. And if you're into where the stars are located in the sky and all that sort of stuff, you want to be watching out for that. There is an awful lot of other stuff attached to that. And if you are into your history, you're going to enjoy that show. But tonight, it's all about Magna Carta, lesson 26. Now, tonight was originally going to be, of course, show 27. And that was going to be a Q&A. We're going to have to push that back till next week. Fitz and I have had a bit of a discussion. Good evening, Fitz. How are you, my good friend?
Good evening, Carl. Good evening, everyone. Lovely to be back in the new year. Worked my tail off to get this one out, so I'm really looking forward to this week's lesson.
So we're going to have a Q&A next week, Fitz, before we get into tonight's show. I thought I'd give people the opportunity to learn about and maybe listen to tonight's show. And the previous 25, folks, don't start asking us questions, or better still, please don't start telling us what you know if you haven't been part of this journey and understand what it is that we're really discussing here. I know a lot of people, particularly trolls I've been in contact with in the week I was sick, seem to believe they know a great deal about Magna Carta. And nobody can answer that age-old question of exactly how Magna Carta 1215 was made invalid. They all go a bit quiet then, and they run off and they accuse me of all sorts of other things. But nobody can answer that question, Fitz. So until that question can be answered, we push on with exactly what we believe. And if nothing else, we will have trial by jury given back to the people, we hope, at some stage in the not too distant future.
Yeah, look, just with the Q&A first, guys, if there's any questions that are popping into your mind, feel free to start jotting them down. Email them to fitz@vofhq.com, if you guys can remember that, fitz@vofhq.com. So I'll start tabulating. We can read them out. If you want to do a voice recording of your questions, then please make a voice recording. Send it in. Would it be best to send it in to you, Carl, if they're doing a voice recording?
Yes. And if you're going to do a voice recording, then the easiest way would be to send it to carl@vofhq.com. Make it short. We don't. You won't probably be able to send much more than about 10 megabytes anyway. Oh, sorry, 10. Yeah. Oh, well, depending on your system and who you're with, 10 gig maybe might be the most you could send. Try and make it an MP3 file. That will make the audio much smaller. Or if you're going to do a video question, by all means do that. It'll need to be an MP4 format. So if you can record it in an MP4 format, it'll need to be, like I say, under 10 gig in size. So make your question succinct. Please don't tell us a story or whatever. If you have the question, just say, g'day, who you are, where you're from, and what your story, what your question is. And I'll play that as one of the ones we've got up. So, but I have limitations on what I can upload. That's why there is a time thing. So if you run more than 90 seconds, and I mean 90 seconds, it just won't allow me to upload it. So I won't have time, hopefully, with all your questions pouring in to edit them. So make your question under 90 seconds long at the absolute most, and I'll be able to upload that, and we'll be able to play that during the show. I'm looking forward to that, Fitz. I'll just type in now our addresses so people can send that through, and you can kick off and explain what it is we're into tonight.
Yep. So tonight we're going to take a look at the Oath of Allegiance. We're going to take a look at it from an angle that most people won't expect. My guess is. Yet I'm hoping this angle that I'm coming in at it from is going to really help let it sink in deeply as to why there is only one solution if you want to get your freedoms back, not just yours, but everybody's. Like, if you really understand how all life is interconnected, I'm really hoping this will help sink it in. And to the level at which our lives and our interpersonal relationships have been destroyed because of our lack of understanding of how we're controlled. So that's what the aim of tonight is, to show that, and how the solution lies in one place and one place only. So that's kind of what we're going to look at tonight. And there's a few videos and some memes in there to help bring that out as well. So hopefully this one is going to have a big impact on expanding your understanding of the oath. So a lot of people still don't understand it truly. So my hope is that this is really going to help cement any sort of loose ends, I guess, that still haven't come good for some people.
Okay, let me just make sure that I've got everything written correctly here in our little scroll, and I think it's all good.
So guys, if there's any questions, like I said, start noting them down, guys. So if any questions that come up tonight for you, note them down, and we'll cover them next week.
Yeah, and you can either email them into Fitz, or if you've got a video question or an audio question, then send that to me, carl@vofhq.com. I've just put a crawl across the bottom of the screen so that people can see how that's working. Now then, I've got to set up our first screen share because I jumped out previously. Are we ready to kick off into this? Oh, it's a video. This one, isn't it?
I'm not sure if we're starting with the video. Actually, I think we're starting with a bit of
are
we starting with the video?
Yeah, no, this one, the external principle behind the Oath of Allegiance to Article 61.
That was my bad, guys. That's meant to say eternal. Bad spelling. Apologize.
That's there you are.
So that was a typo, and I didn't even spot it. So everyone just ignore the X.
Oh, that's all right. I just
thank you. I think you just fixed it for me. I love it.
Okay. Do you want me to read this?
Yeah, if you can. Otherwise, I'm more than happy to do it.
Okay. In order to understand the significance and power of the Oath of Allegiance, first, the pathology that underpins that attraction to slavery, along with the nature of sustainable slavery, needs to be understood. And then we go into a quote from John Steinbeck. And this, I believe, that the free exploring mind of the individual human is the most valuable thing in the world. And this I would fight for. The freedom of the mind to take any direction it wishes undirected. And this I must fight against. Any idea, religion, or government which limits or destroys the individual. This is what I am and what I am about. John Steinbeck.
So I love this quote because that's the whole purpose of why we've been doing these shows. And tonight just goes a little deeper into how that happens, how we get controlled, how we don't even understand how we're being controlled. Like, this is about the eternal spirit fighting for its own voice that's separate from any programming, and just how many layers need to be shed before you can even get to that stage. So we're going to, hopefully if all goes well, going to show a few extra layers that need to be shed.
The thrill of the chase is more exciting than the capture. No matter what the cause, like everything, all roads lead back to nature. All pathologies are a result of the existing conditions, dynamics, built into the laws of nature. In the case of the underlying motivating factor that drives the creation of slavery structures, One of the critical aspects is the proportional relationship between intensity of excitement and time. The
So
laws
just
of nature.
before you go ahead, Carl, that just sort of ties into that first statement about the thrill of the chase. Most people are familiar with that term. You know, it's always more thrilling when you're chasing after something. When you've
Yep.
captured it, it just sort of, that thrill goes. So it's in that moment, that short spurt of time, you know, that there's that promise that you're going to get something you want. That's when the most joy or the most exhilarating feelings happen. But once it's done, it's just flat and empty. So that's sort of just the starting point of how we're going to go into tonight's show.
The laws of nature are such that when self-indulgence is the highest aspiration, the result is short-term thrill, which is only possible in the pursuit, launch, or thrust phase, creating a dependency on repetition or addiction of the pursuit and a dismal dismissal of the consequences of reaching the target. The the pursuit is empty because there is no capacity for lasting satisfaction in short-term pursuits.
So just if you think about if there's something that you really want and you want it badly, like you just think about a kid when they're really after a toy or a new game, and then they get it, they play it a few times, and all of a sudden the sheen comes off and they're over it and they're looking for the next one. It's that
Yep.
sort of same pathology, you know, where there's nothing's ever good enough because we're not pursuing that which is lasting. We're pursuing that which is going to give us a short-term thrill. And so we have been raised on that kind of way of seeing the world as normal. And so this pathology is in every aspect of life. You know, that must have that self-indulgent. And we don't even realize that we've been taken over by something that's not natural to us. And that's a really important thing to understand as to the link we're going to make with the oath.
Okay. Think of self-indulgence as the experience of being a rock thrown up in the sky. Once the rock reaches its peak, the rush is over, and one is left with the counter effect of plummeting to the ground, after which the time spent after impact is agonizing and insufferable, creating an addiction to the pursuit of the chase.
So what that's saying is, if you're really after something, you know, that you believe is critical and is going to be life changing, and you know you can't live without it, you've got that real sort of buzzing feeling inside you in the idea, you know, when you're going to get it. But once you get it, everything, it's like a sugar rush. You know, it goes up really quickly, but it comes down just as fast. And the coming down phase is so bad that all you're thinking about is the next time you're going to get that rush. So that's that addiction cycle that gets created. Now, most people are probably not understanding the connection just yet, so just bear with us. It'll start becoming clearer.
From this, it can be concluded that the dynamics built into nature are such that individual pursuits of pleasure through self-indulgence needs to be short-lived and empty. Otherwise, nature itself would not be sustainable. As each of us is part of nature, it can be postulated that nature is driven to understand itself through our discovery of ourselves within the boundary conditions nature has set up for the quality of all life. Therefore, one can be forgiven for concluding that there is a lesson built into the vacuous nature of self-indulgent pursuits, that being to indulge egoic pleasure is to disconnect from the oneness of life, hence the withdrawals when the impulse is indulged. In contrast, the greater joy one can ever experience, and the lasting fulfillment that follows, comes from the joy of giving freely from the heart to the collective well-being.
So that basically is saying that nature has set it up that, you know, it gives us the option of whether we're going to do something just for ourselves or something that's for the greater good. And because nature requires us to work in synergy and in harmony, that's always going to give us a better outcome if we go for that which everybody requires for their well-being to be improved, versus to if we're just doing it for ourselves. That's why they're short, sharp bursts. So nature's giving us a message of how to find quality. You know, because if it told us that the lasting joy was going to be in self-indulgence, nature itself would implode. It wouldn't be able to be sustained.
Yep, absolutely.
So that's the thing that we need to start understanding, guys. Right? Anything that's only just for a self gain it's not, because it's the feelings you get are meant to be short-lived for a reason.
Okay. The pathology attached to self-indulgence as the highest aspiration stems from induced trauma that it seeks to heal. Unfortunately, this pathology cuts off access to inner resources one is endowed with to stimulate the process of healing. Therefore, the pathology born out of traumatized consciousness carries on down what it knows.
So what
Or
that's
doing.
saying is, that the only way that you can really ever be in that cycle of pursuing what you want, regardless of the consequence of someone else, where you don't care, where the ego is God, is if you've been traumatized to such a level that the only way you could survive it was to act that trauma out. Going to act out that trauma is not going to have the resources of how to do anything different. So it's this self-fulfilling cycle. But the reason why you're acting out that trauma is because you're actually trying to heal from it. This is the conundrum, right? This is the real part about nature, that if we don't understand it, we're going to keep falling in the trap of repetitious cycles. So police are a really good example of this, right? All these guys, they're fully traumatized, from a very early age, and they never had any ways to actually find a way to do different. They didn't have a parental model that showed them a different way. So it's that old saying, hurt people hurt people. They got hurt, so what they hated, they had that self-loathing, and the only reason why they can harm others is because they don't know what love is and self-love is. If they knew what self-love is, they wouldn't be going about doing what they do, where they get off on harming others. And that can only be from traumatized consciousness.
This same pathology is responsible for the setting up of corporations as a shield against the karmic consequences of harvesting of life force energy for the purpose of private accumulation, driven by insatiable self-indulgence. On closer inspection, one will uncover the ritualistic nature of corporations. The reason for this is that ritualistic practice, how one can disassociate from their innate understanding of the consequences of forsaking all in the pursuit of self. That is why corporations only know one word: more.
So if you think about how corporations operate, right, they write their own policies and procedures, and there's certain things that you must carry out in order to keep your job. Well, these are rituals. These are really hidden rituals. Just like if you step into these fake courts, right, every time you speak to the magistrate, you need to stand up or sit, and when you're not, you sit down. If you watch it, there's a ritual going on in place. So that's a corporation itself. And so corporations have their own rituals, but people don't recognize them as rituals. They just see them as part of the practice of the corporate world. What they're really unable to see is that it's just a ritual. And, that's how you get people into a space where they start believing the truth, is because what they do with their actions is what they come to believe as a truth. So that's why they set up these rituals, and very few people are able to recognize that.
Right. Do you want to set up this first video?
I'm just trying to see what the actual title of it was, because
Life Force Harvest, this one is.
Oh, yep. So this one is a really good explanation of. So a lot of people don't understand Satanism. I know we go over it, but it's really important to go back and back and back, because Satanism has been stylized. It's been shown to us like this Christian version of it, where there's like this actual beast, with horns and a tail and ritual sacrifice and stuff like that. But what it really needs to be understood as is an ideology, and it's there to actually siphon off our life force energy. So this video is a really quick way to explain that.
They have no life without us. He didn't say it like that, but that's what I'm getting to. This notion of people are all there is in terms of value. Money's not real. Corporations, you now know, are dead. So I want you to think of corporations as zombies, the walking dead. And what do they need to feed on? You got it. They need lifeblood. And what is lifeblood? Credit. And who has the credit? Only people have credit. And so this is where it comes full circle to an understanding. Banks need you. They can't survive without leeching your life force. What is your life force? We could say prana or semen, but that's not today's conversation. Your life force in this context is credit. Credit is life when you start to learn it. Debt is death. Credit is life. Hopefully that's not too complicated. Simple. So this was mind-blowing for me when that's what I mean. When I came from the spiritual perspective when I started diving deeper into this stuff. And when these things really clicked for me, it's like, okay, that is how all of this is working. We're basically being harvested. It's exactly like the scene in The Matrix where you're popping the thing out of the back of your head, or like The Walking Dead or whatever it may be. There's a lot of movies about it. But humans labor, but it's deeper than their labor, because what allows them to have labor or to practice labor is their life force. So we're literally being harvested. Our life force is being harvested, and it's done through all really sleight of hand and mastery and manipulation of words. So that's why I'm always bringing things back to the words.
Yeah, well, words mean things, folks.
Yeah, so, I see someone saying credit is not life force. I don't know if they actually understand what the meaning was in that message there about everything's transferable. So the banking system uses that which exists in nature. They just have a different term for it, because credit basically means the potential, right? We all have potential to create, and we have a store of energy by which we do it. So if you understand it like that, it's not really that hard to get, right? So it's really, really simple, guys. You don't need to overcomplicate it. And so the whole point of a corporation is if it's dead, it's soulless, how's it going to survive, right? It's going to survive by using that which is alive to feed it. That's pretty much what that whole banking system is. It's just another way to siphon off our energy for their own gain.
Absolutely.
It's really simple.
During the height of the Egyptian Empire, corporations were not formally recognized as they are today, yet the underlying pathology was present during that time. The motivating force behind the Egyptians moving from the singular tactic of brutal punishment to diversifying into mind control was brought about when they uncovered the power of the mind, namely intrinsic motivation, to be a far more efficient way to increase productivity. They figured out a well-crafted story that utilizes the other side of fear, that serves as an intrinsic self-sustaining motivator, that being fear of missing out, or missing out, otherwise known as a reward. Did you get that? I'll say that again. That being fear of missing out, otherwise known as a reward. This is how the self-elected rulers were able to indulge their insatiable cravings for more and saw the power of illusion unfold in real time. By selling the belief of eternal reward in the afterlife being dependent upon the quality of output in this life, the result was a 30% increase in output.
So what that's saying, well, just before we go ahead, Carl, what that's saying is that you can whip a dog only so hard before it can't do anymore. However, if you actually find a way to give them inspiration where they're going to believe that something is more powerful, coming for them, then they will find this internal energy will just show up, right? And they work that out. So this is a very clever way. Remember what was said? These people who think in a certain way where it's never enough. They're always after the thrill of the chase. They're always looking for more because they're never satisfied. Because what empty. So because they're always looking for more, they're thinking of new ways of how they can get more. That's that corporate mindset, right? So it happened well before the word even came into being, but that actual pathology was well alive, at the time of the Egyptians. And so then I realized that, well, all we have to do is give them a promise of something bigger and better than what they can achieve here. And, we can stop whipping them. We don't have to whip them as hard. I mean, you still have to keep the tension between the two. However, it's not the only way to get something done. And, they found it really successful. And that's what the Romans learnt from.
Well, the Romans did the same thing. They figured out that increasing brutality would ultimately lead to their downfall, hence the creation of the three major world religions, inhibitors to the evolution of consciousness, based on astrotheology.
Yeah, so now we're going to have a video from Mark, talks about the satanic mindset. So this will really, hopefully, it's going to start putting some pieces of the puzzles together for people.
A above all else, Satanism is a mindset, and this is what has to be completely understood. One of the most critical principles of natural law is that all things begin as thoughts. Again, that is the principle of mentalism in natural law. This principle eventually extends to the macrocosmic law. As humans think in the aggregate, so shall be the quality of their collective experience on earth. Your mindset ultimately determines behavior, and your behavior ultimately determines the quality of your experience. That is how natural law functions, to bring us the consequence not only of what we believe, but how we behave in the world. And then we have made that bed, and then we must sleep in it. If the slave masters of our world can give a lower level, far less informed variant of their own mindset, their own religion, to those they wish to rule over, it becomes that much easier for them, the Satanists, to control their would-be slaves, people who they give a lower level variant of their very own mindset and religion to, that those people, their slaves, don't even understand is the lower level mindset of their ruling class masters. Again, the principle of mentalism dictates that the all is mind, and that the universe is ultimately a mental construct derived by and directed by mind. These are teachings that are taught in the Hermetic traditions and many other traditions that teach natural law. But here is the variant that I've explained to people.
There we go.
Yeah, so as you can see, like anything that exists in reality, as we've gone over, it's a really important thing to keep covering, has to start in the mind. What people believe is what they do. And so if you're going to run a system that's in opposition to the laws of nature, that which is verifiable, you need to change the way that people perceive their natural environment. And so that's why all the effort goes into that. So it connects with what was said before about the Egyptians, how they went into the mind, right? And to give promises, etc. You know, these things don't exist in reality. You can't uncover any of those things they told them to believe. The astrotheologies, those three major religions that exist in the world, they're all based on astrotheology. Now that can be verified in nature. But yet, you know, it stimulates really strong emotions because we, you know, attach to something that gives us comfort. And once we attach, it's pretty hard to detach. And that's all they needed to do. They just found that out, and they just ran with it. And that's still prevalent today. So as we go along, more and more that'll become hopefully a bit more clearer.
Learning from the Egyptian model, the masters of the enslavement system, driven by desire for more, knew without a shadow of a doubt that their long-term survival and prosperity was dependent upon finding the right balance between mental and physical prisons, and the work was going to be in maintaining that balance. They recognized that this process was going to require a significant allocation of resources, along with disciplined dedication to the constant development and expansion of the artifice of illusion. That same dynamic is still in play to this day. Through this...
so that's, just before you go ahead, Carl. So that's really important to understand, right? They understood that now they're going to run this lie, right? That they can't just take their foot off the pedal. They're going to have to throw everything at it and be totally hyper vigilant and monitor it and see how it's going. And if you think about what happened through this COVID nonsense, right? That was so obvious. Like they were uniform in their messaging. Like every institution was sending the same message. That takes a lot of coordination, you know, to be able to do that in a uniform way. So, you know, when they went all out, they went all out because they knew that was the only way it was going to happen. Because you constantly have to, in every single aspect, has to be giving the same message. Not one can be, there can't be one hole where people can get out of. It all has to be plugged. You know, so that's why they, you know, they knew that this was going to be something they're going to have to maintain and sustain, you know, forever if they were going to keep their system alive.
Through this process, the Dark Priest class discovered that long-term sustainability of a system in opposition to the laws of nature is dependent upon predictability and stability, which can only be manufactured through illusion. The manufacture and propagation of the illusion of free choice was uncovered as critical to long-term success. These ancient psychologists understood if the enslaved believed themselves in charge of their thoughts, they would be convinced in their choices that they're autonomous, triggering the involuntary response of defending their decisions to the death.
So that basically says if you can get people to believe that they are in charge of their own decisions, they're not going to be able to realize that they're being manipulated into them. And once you believe that you're in charge of your decisions, it's an involuntary thing that you're going to defend them. And there's no way, there's nothing anyone can say or do that's going to change that. And you want the perfect example, right? Just look at trying to explain what's been happening in the world over the past 2.5 years to anyone who believes what the TV tells them. There's a perfect example right there. You know, there's no way you can construct any kind of evidence where they're going to actually look at it as being valid. It's just not possible, because in their minds, they've worked it all out for themselves, and that's all they need to believe. And, you know, this is a very well-crafted way to make sure that you run a slavery structure.
Yeah. 100%.
So now we're just going to go into a video that just gives a bit more definition and understanding of Satanism for what it really is, not that stylized version that Hollywood gives us.
This is why everyone says it's a satanic system, a Luciferian system. They say, oh, it's all Satanism. And you go, oh, these kooky, conspiracy theorists. Well, what we're actually saying whenever you hear that term, Satanism, is that it's a philosophical claim, not a metaphysical claim, really. We're saying that Lucifer is, archetypally speaking, is the antithesis to God, right? God is love, Satan is fear. So only God can give free will, and Satan, being the inverse of God, seeks to do the opposite, right? Satan is that which seeks to take free will. But Satan can only take free will freely. It has to be under consent of some kind. So that's why Lucifer is called what? The great deceiver, right? Even in the Bible. So Lucifer does that, takes your free will through lies, confusion, fear, deception, manipulation. It has to play tricks on you, right, to get you to give your free will to Satan, to the system. So Lucifer sort of has to tell you everything that he's doing to you, because it needs to be freely given free will. But Lucifer tricks you into not seeing the full picture of what Lucifer's doing to you. So Satanism as a term just means the inversion of truth. That's all it means. That's why the Church of Satan has upside down Star of David, upside down crosses. It's showing you what their principle is based on, which is the inversion of truth, right? So that's what it means when you hear that the systems of the world are satanic. It means that every world power, every government runs on this philosophy of inverting truth through deception and fear and manipulation. So that's why we say they have no actual power. They just have the illusion of power, because we're ignorant to the games that they're playing, and we keep giving them what they need to survive. And so that's why in the Bible, God says, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. Not for a lack of power or life, but knowledge is why we perish.
Hosea 4:6. I love that one.
Yeah, very, very interesting.
So in the Bible, they even tell you, right? So the way it works is they give you a little bit of truth, so you can recognize it. It's verifiable, and with that, then they mix a whole bunch of deception. That's how all these religious texts are done. They just need to be able to draw you in, and then you start thinking, oh well, that's got to be true, because but most of this stuff is common sense. It's not come from some other some divine source, because anything in there is all we can work out for ourselves. But some people get so caught up in how fantastic it is and the feelings they get, they take it as come from some higher power with all this knowledge that they could never themselves work out for themselves. But at the same time, then it's written in with all these things that are convoluted, that do the opposite, that are an inversion of truth, and then you swallow the whole thing. And then you start getting people acting out in ways that they don't even understand why they're doing what they're doing, because the whole thing is done to make you act in contradiction to your true intelligence. So that's just a little quick way, hopefully, for people to look at what Satanism is, because they're always inverting truth. And in order to do it, they have to give you some truth first.
Absolutely. The formula for mind control. The formula for mind control is quite simple. Take that which is universally discoverable, what many people call common sense. For example, thou shalt not steal. Frame that knowledge in a way that gives it the appearance of coming from a higher authority. Then pour copious amounts of information that contradicts inherent intelligence over the top. Once life force energy has been invested into accepting contradiction as truth, emotions are stimulated that trigger action to reinforce the lie indeed. The spending of precious energy that cannot be unspent is the process by which one's identity is shaped externally. The pursuit of writing down behaviors that are deemed acceptable or unacceptable is the favorite tactic of the immoral man to control the mind and behaviors of moral men, perfected in the three major religious texts on this planet.
So, like we did, I think it was just before we went for the break at the end of last year, we did that thing about the 10 Commandments. Some people, found that really upsetting, but that is pretty much what happens in the 10 Commandments. It tells you what behaviors are acceptable and what is not. Right? We all know that. No one needs to tell us that. And if you have someone writing that down as if that is now some authority, that is a structure. And very, very few people who attach to these texts, they can't see that, because they can recognize these things as truth. They think, well, some higher power must be writing it. But then why would we be endowed with that inherent intelligence? That doesn't make any sense. That's a contradiction. We can all work out those things for ourselves, and we have a moral compass. We're given that for a reason.
Would you say people that believe in Moses and the burning bush then are on one side of religion, and others who are also would call themselves religious but don't believe in burning bushes have...
Yeah, well, sorry, carry on.
Well, they have pretty much the idea that of what you've just said, that they've expended a certain amount of energy and belief, but they've yet to, I don't know, grasp it.
Yeah, so like if you,
sorry,
that's okay. I'll see if I can figure it out. So if you take on something as a truth, then your actions are going to go and act that out. And once you actually act it out, then it becomes a reality. So you've put your life force energy into following your beliefs with your actions. Once you spend that energy that's in your body, you can't unspend it, right? And so then there's an attachment that happens. So yes, if you believe in the 10 Commandments and you start actually absorbing that into yourself as if that's actually a reality, that's going to be really hard to actually like separate itself out of you, because now it attaches to every fiber of your being. And very few people, when they've made that attachment, understand how that process works. And so they will fight that to the death. There's no chance they're going to give that up. And this is the really subtle way of how we're subliminally programmed. It's through that desire of something really, that really feels us. It's a superficial feeling, but very few of us understand that. With some kind of feelings of safety and that we've been looked after by this, like this big figure that, has got a plan for us. So that's meeting our needs for certainty, and that's a very powerful way to manipulate and control people. And without realizing it, you go into that Stockholm syndrome, and very few people know that that's what those texts are for. And this will be very inflammatory I can imagine there'll be a lot of people getting inflamed by me saying this right now. But that's what those texts are actually designed to get you to love your actual captor, without realizing you're doing it. It's got to be done so subtly. So yes, that whole burning bush and the tablets and all that kind of stuff, every single one of us can work that out. That's why it's common sense. We don't need someone to tell us, what behaviors are okay and what aren't. So why do we need it written down for us? If you've written it down, that's someone setting limits for you, and you are now agreeing to be their slave. And it's so subtle, very few people will be able to understand that, who have attached that way, should I say.
Okay. Since then, the masters of mankind have been impregnating thought by developing complex and intricate systems, constantly evolving in strategy to help conceal subliminal programming from the field of vision the majority have the capacity to access. The perfect dictatorship would have the appearance of a democracy, but would basically be a prison without walls in which the prisoners would not even dream of escaping. It would essentially be a system of slavery where through consumption and entertainment, the slaves would love their servitudes.
So we've put this one up on previous lessons. However, I wanted to bring it back just and give it another life with this context that we're running today. So just to help, if you are going to go through the lessons, when you do see this one and the previous one, it'll give you one aspect of understanding, and hopefully when you come up to this one, it'll just help solidify that in another way from another vantage point.
Yeah. One of the mind-impregnating strategies that preserves the appearance of free will in a system of slavery is the appropriation of institutions that act as the levers of power to appear as having the capacity to be influenced by the people. This is done by maintaining ritualized protocols, constitutions, legal rights, petitions, protests, court challenges, appeals, my will letters. That mirrors systems of service while ever so subtly and systematically inverting those protocols over time. Without these facades for the masses to cling to, the volatile reality of warlords and robber barons would be prevalent. The modern immoral man avoids volatile structures as they are unpredictable and unstable, making them vulnerable to collapse.
So, the Romans back in their time, they realized if they kept whipping their slaves and kept being brutal, that they were going to push back. It was only a matter of time. So that's when they started working out, we've got to come up with this elusive system that gets the people to believe they have some kind of power, right? So that's thousands of years old, and they've just been perfecting it, as they go along. So that's why they keep the facade going of calling these people public servants, giving them oaths to take publicly. They need to keep that facade. Otherwise, if they don't have that and they don't have these protocols, that you're supposed to follow, then we're all going to know what kind of system we're living under, and it's going to be too brutal, and it's only a matter of time until we all tear it down. But if you create that illusion that people still have the power, they're still going to live in hope that there's a way to make things better within the system. So that's why they keep that going. It's a very clever mind trick, right? So everything's about illusion. And so tonight's episode hopefully is going to start helping people really pull that away and see how it was done, and how it's still being done. So that's why we're sort of working our way to the oath slowly, guys, but we're getting there.
Thank you, Sunflower. Love you so much. Hope you're having a great month. Fast forward to why corporations choose to masquerade as a system of service to the people. As knowledge is potential for power, critical knowledge of the significance of the authentic oath of service to the people was deliberately hidden to create the illusion of a civilized, democratic state that upholds the principles of equity and justice as the highest aspiration. A critical element required to keep the illusion of a system of service to the people alive was to preserve the ceremonial aspect of the public service oath. If the ceremony was removed, the likelihood of people realizing they are under government dictatorship would increase dramatically.
So if you just have a think about, just quickly, Carl, just have a think about every time there's a new prime minister, what do? They show them doing what? Making an oath. But is it the correct one? No. But how many people are aware of that? Very little. So as long as they give that pretense that they're doing something formalized, that has some kind of ritual attachment, that it means something of value, that would just keep the people, dull enough to not even look into it properly. So that's why they keep that going. And they've changed it. They've totally inverted those oaths. They mean nothing compared to what they originally did. So that's all they have to keep doing. As long as they provide that facade, that's all that matters.
To understand why propping up superficial facades, ceremonial aspect of the oath of office in a constitutional monarchy system, is essential for all dictatorships presenting as people-powered institutions, consider the wedding ceremony dynamic. The time, energy, and labor that goes into arranging the established rituals, hens and bucks nights, engagement party, dress selections, flower arrangements, venues, food, creates an alluring facade so seductive it's an offer to the masses that they're powerless to refuse.
So basically, we're going to make a link into something that most people can actually recognize. There's something ceremonial about a wedding as well as there is in when we're doing public service as well. So there's a link there. So we're going to make a link with the relationship between government and the people in a way that hopefully is going to help people understand how this really works. Because our own interpersonal relationships with each other and how they're failing all the time, because you think about how many successful marriages there are, they're very few, is extrapolated out the same way as government and the people. And we're going to get into that as we go along.
Note this. In the service of connecting the dots laid out above and below, think of the concealer or avoider in an interpersonal relationship as being the government and the dedicated partner as the people. The sheer scale of couples that succumb to social pressure and put the bulk of their energy behind the build-up to making the big day as memorable as possible, and traditionally it is one of the two parties that takes the burden of that responsibility. The vows are the pinnacle of ceremony, yet that's as far as they go. Commonly, there is at least 1 out of 2 that do not hold to their vow to stand by the other for better or for worse.
So if we just have a quick break there, Carl, just quickly.
Yep.
If you think about, right, where there's a wedding ceremony, usually it's the female and her side of it that puts in the bulk of the effort, right? Most guys just get told what to do, right? And they just go along with it, right? So that's not an equal distribution of labor right there, right? So someone's more into the ceremony than the other. We never really look at why we do that. We just go along because that's what other people do. See that not thinking and that falling into the social pressure, that's just what you have to do. And then you look at what happens with governments as well. Like they go in and put all their effort into that ceremony. They make the pomp, and all that stuff. But then what happens after that, right? And this is where the connection is. Same with the wedding, right? What happens after that ceremony? If all the energy went in the lead up, but then how much energy goes into keeping that relationship vibrant? Where there's equal, equal dedication to keeping that vibrancy alive. It doesn't happen the same. And why is that? And we still keep doing it. We know they're a failure, yet people still keep doing it. Like lemmings jumping off, a cliff. It's just one after the other. It doesn't stop. Yet we've got all the evidence and the data that shows it's a terrible idea. It doesn't work out. But yet we keep coming and doing it. So we've got to start thinking why we keep repeating patterns, that are not actually in the service of what we're wanting. And we do the same with government. No, it's no difference. And it's all about the illusion.
In contrast, consider the actual number of couples that come together with equal dedication to putting their energy into building the quality of their relationship so that the foundation for lasting peace and cohesion is in place for the union to develop and flourish through the never-ending set of challenges life is likely to bring.
So just quickly, Carl, like how many people really, have done the groundwork before they even think about getting married, right? Where they've got a harmonious, humming relationship first. That's very few. And those are the ones that would be successful because they've already built the foundation. Majority of people have not done that, and they learn the lesson along the way after they've gotten married. And then they're like, oh, why did I even start this? And then they don't know how to get out. So this is, we go into things with a superficial understanding. And that's just the way we've been controlled very early. So we don't even know what a successful interpersonal relationship is because we've never had a model of it. So this is how we end up being our own slave masters without knowing we're doing it.
Yep, 100%. J1, thank you, and good evening to you too. Didn't see you pop into the room. What is the likely outcome in relationships that have opposing energies where one carries a greater commitment to the transparency and truthfulness necessary to build a quality connection, while the other carries a greater commitment to concealing truth as a means to preserve their pattern of indulging impulses and urges, regardless of the consequence to others? Is it peaceful, fulfilling, and enriching? Or is there unrelenting tension, placing the burden of keeping the arrangement together on illusion?
So now if we just take a quick look at government as the concealer, right? Look how much time and energy they go into what? Making sure they can keep indulging their impulses, keep taking from the people, right? Their urges are the most important thing. Remember how we started the show? We're talking about the thrill of the chase, just getting that rush, of making sure that we're getting more. They want to conceal. That's what they're all about. So to conceal it, they create this ceremony. no different to a wedding ceremony. You've got to start thinking who started this whole idea, and what's it there to serve.
Yep. The truth concealer thrives on the power of controlling others through domination and manipulation of truth due to indulgence of the ego as their highest aspiration. Conversely, the illusion for the giver is the hope that the concealer will eventually see the error of their ways and organically change their behavior to align with the joys of being a contributor to the quality of their shared reality.
So we take that one, that what happens, where there's one partner that is all about themselves, right? And they're just finding ways to conceal what they're really doing. And then eventually, slowly, that becomes more and more obvious. And the other one, who's the one who's more dedicated to the quality, who wants to have something, important happen between the two of them. Like if I stick at it, if I just do this. And that's what we're like with government. We think that we've still got some avenue of influence, and then they will, we'll be able to find a way as to within this current structure, where they will come to heel and they will do that which the agreement is. And it never gets better. It always gets worse. So what's being said here is, while we stay in the illusion that there isn't a way to get better, they always get worse if we don't see the truth for what it really is.
The dominant party's energy goes into manufacturing the illusion of a harmonious relationship to the outside world, while the subordinate party puts energy into the illusion that they have the power to influence the relationship for the better.
So that's what we've been doing. We always think, if we vote this group out and we vote this group in, things are going to get better. And it's the same treadmill every single time. And we just haven't learnt the lesson. We just keep coming back.
As with all things superficial, illusion is not enough because the self-interested party continues their insatiable pattern for taking, and then it's simply a matter of time until the illusion can no longer be sustained at its optimum level due to the accumulation of violations endured by the other party.
So if we have a look at how many people bitch and moan about government and how terrible it is, right? So that illusion is never been able to sustain, right? We know how crappy our lives are. We reflect back to a time when, it was one parent had to work and the other stayed home. And we think back to those times, and then we have a look at how dear housing is, etc., the cost of living. So that illusion is not there, yet we still believe there's a way to stay within the system where things can get better. And that's all they need you to do. They just need you to stay in that system. So they've got to create the illusion that's just enough for you not to get out of that system and destroy it. That's all they need to do. So that's why they have to keep that superficial aspect alive, for you to believe there is an avenue for you where you have power.
When the abused party wants out, the option for leaving or divorce is largely dependent on the abused acknowledging and accepting the relationship for what it really is in order to gain clear direction of the actions required to improve their situation.
Yeah, so basically, it comes down to us seeing the truth for what it is. And, if we can get to that place, then things start changing. But no one's going to do it for us. It's got to be us and nobody else.
Wow, as above, so below. There is no such thing as freedom of choice unless there is freedom to refuse.
That's a massive statement, guys, right?
Yep.
Really think about that. How can there be a freedom of choice if you don't get to say no and it's actually dismissed? If you say no and it's dismissed, how do you get a choice? And that's what government is. Every time we say no, it doesn't matter. Think about how the police treat you. It's a perfect example. It's right in our faces. We've never had choice, not the freedom of it. Is fear to direct which of the two choices we're going to choose.
Yeah. I was going to go off on another tangent, but I won't. That's something I'll say for another show. In this dynamic, the concealer is in a state of perpetual terror because they are acutely aware of the consequences to them should the illusion ever be exposed and the true nature of the union be revealed. The inner world of the abuser is one of internal panic and chronic anxiety, brought on by how annihilating their perception of loss of power would feel. These feelings are so unbearable, the only way the abuser has learned to survive is by using the dominated as containers to hold their unbearable feelings for them. Hence, the high level of undiagnosed mental disorders, depression, chronic physiological illnesses, drug use and abuse, suicides, homicides, addictions, afflictions, debauchery, perversions, compulsions, and ritualistic violence that comes with a relational framework that is in opposition to universal morality.
So if we take a personal understanding of if you've ever been with someone who's a narcissist, and the methods they use to get you to believe that there's something the matter with you, right? That you're not, you've got to always second guess yourself that, oh, maybe that's not what, really happened, right? That's government. So they're exactly the same relationship. There's no difference, right? They're always going to make it like there's something the matter with you. That's why all those government actors, right, they use rhetoric, because rhetoric makes it sound like you're inventing stuff. You don't understand reality, right? And that's what someone who is a dominator in a relationship that is narcissistic, they'll use the same tactic. So it's no different. It's exactly the same. And we need to understand that every relationship, doesn't matter if it's a professional one or a interpersonal one, they operate exactly the same because we all operate under the laws of nature. We either live in harmony with them or we live in opposition to them. There's no separation between any relationship that we can have with anyone else. And that's what government is. It's just like a really bad marriage. And so this is about understanding, when you live under a dictatorship disguising itself, remember, because they're concealing the truth, right? They're disguising themselves as if they are a fair income partner, right? But every action they show us in their deeds is showing us the opposite, right? It takes us to believe in an illusion, for us to keep it going and them to manufacture that illusion in order for us to buy into it. And then you think about all the afflictions that we have, like all the sicknesses that exist. So if you're being gaslighted by somebody, right, think about what it does to your mental state of being, right? So it's no different with government, right? You think about every single sickness that exists, right? Perversions, all the weird we do, right? That's because of the sickness of us being gaslit, right? On a collective scale, that our inherent intelligence knows what's true, yet our survival depends on us believing the opposite of the truth. Like imagine the sickness that creates inside us and the things we'll do to try and survive that sickness. And most of those things are quite sick.
The experience acquired from interpersonal relationships form the foundation of what we accept from all relationships, that power struggles are the natural conditions of life. By the time adulthood arrives, the system has embedded itself so deep into our fibers, there is no way of distinguishing the inorganic structure from an organic way of being. This distortion of reality is so ubiquitous and so omnipresent that instead of seeing a wide open field of possibilities large enough to accommodate mutual gain, our vision is inverted into seeing behaviors in opposition to one another as a necessity of life. For example, for one to gain, another must lose, which is the definition of self-inflicted suffering.
So we've done this. Sorry, Carl. We've done this with the sport one that we did a while back about competitive sports. That whole thing about competition is natural, right? That is an inversion of truth. It's not. That's an induced state. And while we still believe that that's natural, we are perpetuating and contributing to our own suffering. And very few people that I've seen are able to separate from that and see that it's been induced into us. And if we don't understand that's not natural, that there's no such thing as, one is better than another, that doesn't exist, right? That's actually a manufactured understanding for us to actually harm each other. Because if we're not harming each other, right, we can't be controlled. And then we've got to enjoy it, right? And that's what, unfortunately, those who love sport, you're going to have to hear it again, I'm sorry, but that's what sport is designed to do. It's to get us to enjoy harming each other and seeing someone lose, because the only way that you can gain is at someone else's loss. If you believe that, you're going to enjoy violence.
A dictatorship structure masquerading as democracy leaves no way to opt out of its grasp, meaning liberation of the subordinated can only come about by stripping away the facade to expose the skeleton in order to dismantle the entire system piece by piece.
Yep. So we're starting to move into the truth about the oath now. So we're really, hopefully, guys, are starting to see how this is all going. But this is us. We've got to see what's really there before we can actually start tearing it apart, guys, because it has to come down. We cannot leave any of it up. None of it. None of this using their structure to beat it. If we do that, we are just going to contribute to more suffering and prolong the whole agony. And so it has to all come down. You know, that's why I've spoken about John Wilson so highly, because he understands that.
Australia was intended to be, and still is, a dictatorship by stealth, making the setup of the fake 1900 Imperial Constitution and 1901 Constitutional Act a critical strategy to sustain the illusion. The intended system of service has been so contorted that the relationship between the people and government is like a forced marriage that must end in tears. The choice we have is whether it ends badly for government or for us.
Yeah, so this is the real choice we have, guys, right? If we still keep using their system, like going into their courts, having Supreme Court challenges, High Court challenges, you know, just protests for the sake of saying how unhappy we are, you know, like using all the avenues they've set up for us to be controlled, thinking that we have some power there, nothing's going to change, and it's going to end really badly for us, right? Because we can't keep sustaining these hits. And you can see how rapidly they're really turning the screws, right? Every time you turn on the TV or you hear something, you'll see there's another thing they're adding just to take more and more away. And so if we don't actually stand together, you know, and be the one who can see the relationship for what it is, then we're going to keep in that pain structure and that pain cycle.
If we had to give the illusion a name, would I be off target if I called it the illusion that has been created is called democracy?
Yep, that's a pretty good way to put it. Yep. So giving that name democracy gives it that impression that we all have collective say, and that we all have a way to be an influencer in the experience of our day-to-day life.
People living in Victoria, I'm sure, know that the democratic voting process down there works so well that today they've just been reminded that as of the 1st of July this year, there will be a windfall tax of 62.5% placed on your property if it is rezoned. Say your property is worth $1 million and they decide to rezone the land you're on, you own your house outright. And after the rezoning, your property is worth $1.5 million, then they will tax you everything over $100,000 at 62.5% and call it a windfall tax. If you can't afford to pay it at the time, they will offer you 30 years to pay it off, thereby hooking you back into a debt trap that isn't even a debt trap. They've just created a tax and want you to pay for it, or they'll take your land. So Victoria,
that's a perfect example. Yeah, I love that, Carl. It's a perfect example, right? It's just every moment they can, they're just taking more. It's really
wind it up.
Yep. And eventually there'll be nothing left to take. So until we stand up and go, enough of this, you know. But we can only do it together. It can't be just pieces here and there. No, you know, it's got to be collective effort.
While the people continue to believe that the fake constitution offers an avenue of influence to restore and protect our natural-born rights and freedoms, our self-inflicted suffering continues until it ends badly for us.
So the Bill of Rights is a really good example of how you take a little bit of truth, right? And then you put in a bunch of inversions to truth. And then as long as there's something in there that people can recognize, they'll accept all of it as being valid. Just like the Bible, just like the Quran, just like the Torah, the Talmud, saying all that stuff. It's no different. So that was done years and thousands of years ago. They had that system worked out. And all they've done is they've transferred it into things like they call constitutions.
The honey trap for the masses. An act of parliament that was deceptively written to include one or two constitutional libertarian sentiments to draw us in by inserting a meritorious or credible paragraph. By being drawn in, one is accepting and embracing the whole act without realizing that elsewhere the Declaration text contained one of the most devastating weapons to the original Constitution safety mechanism, the annihilation of trial by jury and the annulment by jury. The 1901 Commonwealth of Australia Constitution was constructed in similar fashion for the same purposes. Before there can be any healing from trauma, there first needs to be a removal of the conditions that induced trauma imposed from the slavery structure. Intimate understanding of the principles of universal morality contained within the 3 common law articles of the 63 that make up Magna Carta 1215 is the knowledge, potential for power, necessary to neutralize the ancient slavery system built on inducing trauma as a means of concentrating power for absolute control.
So just before you go ahead, Carl, I just want to jump in because this has triggered a conversation I was having yesterday about police, how if they do a road stop, right, and you don't actually start doing what they tell you, what's the first thing they do? They threaten you with what? Right? They threaten you with some kind of loss or harm to yourself or your property. What does that do? It induces trauma, right? Any system that has a moral principle behind it would never do that. So if you ever were confused about who the people are, what kind of terrorists they are, just listen to your body when they threaten you. It'll tell you everything, right? So we really got to start paying careful attention to what tactics they use to get what they want. You know, it's no different to a bully at school. It's the same thing. So listen to your inherent intelligence, guys. It's all throughout your body. And that's how we understand what they do. It's all induced trauma. And when trauma is induced to you, you cannot operate from a considered place where you can think things out clearly, right? You're in this panic space and you're saying and doing things you never would. That's why they use that tactic, because they need to have you all over the place, not calm and collected. It's a deliberate thing. And they're told, do whatever you need to. Make shit up if you have to, right? But you get that outcome. Now, what kind of structure actually promotes that? That's an outright warlord. That's what warlords do. They use exactly the same tactics. And we need to be able to see what's there, guys.
Exactly right. Tasha Marie, you be safe on that drive home. Magna Carta 1215 is the moral agreement that forms the basis of the construction of a nation. Authentic common law is an expression of the care and will to practice our understanding of universal morality and bring it into reality. Common law articles 39, 40, and 61 are the contract that binds government to act in the service of the people under the principles of universal morality, in order to have the grant of authority of the people under the stewardship of and for the people.
That's a really big comment, guys. It's really important you understand that. So if you're watching this for the first time, I highly encourage you to go back and watch this again. That last comment is massive, right? The only place where morality exists in any agreement where the people are in charge of their own lives is in the MC 1215. It does not exist anywhere else. And those 3 articles are the epitome of morality. 39 and 40 is about how we remain free. And 61 is how we return morality when it's been stripped from us. Like that, it's massive. So it's really important. It doesn't exist anywhere else. If you use any other structure, any of this codified law stuff we've done in the previous shows, right, you are contributing to immorality. So there's no fence to stand on here, guys. There's only one place to stand, and you've got to pick which one it is. You cannot mix methods, right? It doesn't work. If you're mixing methods, sorry, Carl, go ahead.
It's not hard to understand why the Catholic Church decided to rewrite Magna Carta and leave those articles out completely, along with a few others, because it changed the entire nature. And those people that are swearing their allegiance to a 1297 Magna Carta still can't answer the question about it being written by a Catholic Pope.
Yeah, then once you understand principle, guys, everything becomes really, really simple. But you really need to understand principle. You test everything against principle. Because principle is neutral. It doesn't favor, it doesn't care about your beliefs, right? And if we all act on principle, that's how we come together and unify. But if we start going into someone else's prejudices, thinking that these are actually rights and all that kind of stuff, we can't unify. So that's how I do it, guys. I just look at principle and I test every question that I ever get asked against principle. And it's really easy. You just got to actually understand it. You need to overcome your biases to do it, though. That's why that first post, that first meme was up at the top. It's about you fight for truth no matter what.
Yeah. So why is there such a small uptake of people willing to stand in defence of authentic common law as represented in the common law articles of Magna Carta 1215? The overwhelming majority have accepted the belief that the purpose of life on this planet is to accumulate as much sensate pleasure and comfort as possible, therefore are resistant to adopt behaviours that threaten accumulation and comfort. The power of mind control is so great that the masses live in a state of conditioned response, desiring only immediate sensate pleasure, to such an extent that they lack the basic willpower to stop engaging in habits promoting the unnecessary onset of sickness and disease, indicating a complete detachment from their innate intelligence geared to preserve the quality of life.
So if you just think about people's day-to-day behavior, how many people go out and get smashed? You know what I mean? That's all they want to do. How many people actually went and got jabs just so they could go out and keep getting smashed, right? You think about that massive contradiction, right? Yeah. So people are constantly engaging in behaviors that work against the actual quality of their life without even realizing. They think that that's how to live life, is to do things that actually take from life. And they can't figure out, you know, that their behavior is actually working against what their actual life's purpose is. And you can only do that if you're mind controlled, you know. And this is like, they've been knowing this for centuries because they've been watching what we do.
Yeah.
You know, if you wanted to have a look at it, guys, just sit somewhere and watch people's behavior, and it'll show itself to you. Just sit quietly and observe, and you'll see the things they put into their bodies, right, without even thinking about it, just because it's giving them immediate pleasure. And that's as far as it goes. And it just shows you how well programmed they are. And that's why, you know, people are really wanting just to get a result for themselves right now. And if they can't get a result for themselves right now, worth looking into. And Magna Carta doesn't promise you a result for yourself right now.
A famous statement about standing on principle. I do not fight fascists because I expect to win. I fight them because they are fascists.
So we're actually going to look at the root of that word now. This is going to be very revealing. So I'm hoping you guys are going to learn something from this. Can you read that definition there, Carl? Is it big enough to read?
Oh,
fasces?
Yeah. Fasces, is that how you say it? Thank you. Fasces, a bundle of rods with a projecting axe blade carried by a lictor in ancient Rome as a symbol of a magistrate's power and used as an emblem of authority in fascist Italy.
And so now when you scroll, we're going to see the same symbol, that fasces, in the Supreme Court in America. So they thought that they had a democracy, but look at what's on each side. It's that axe that's bound up with these tightly.
Yeah,
you know, so they've been showing us this whole time, and nobody's known it. So we must understand symbolism, guys, because it's going to tell us everything. And so here's another one for you to understand. Anyone who thought that America had a legitimate constitution, there's your evidence. It was never set up as that. It was always a control structure. It was never going to be anything other than that. And so that's where the term fascist come from.
Wow, there you go. Learn something new every day. Standing under law requires one to widen their gaze past the seduction of personal gain and towards the light of the eternal flame of freedom that ignites the indomitable spirit to its true calling. By taking the oath of allegiance to Article 61 of Magna Carta 1215, you're making a statement of intent to stand in defense of universal morality, a principle which is eternal and inextinguishable.
So now we're going to go into a video again by Mark Passio. Obviously, you'll see that I'm a big fan of what he puts out. And he explains alchemy and how that connects with the oath. This is where we're trying to purify ourselves, right? We're getting rid of all those desires for immediate gratification, right? And anyone who takes the oath, you know, has that will to move past that initial sensate pleasure into something that's lasting, right? Where there's a lasting like value, not just for ourselves, but for everybody. This is the when we stand on principle. This is when we, step into our divine nature, our purpose of why we're here. It's not just to get what we want to accumulate for ourselves. That's all part of the way that we're controlled. And so this video on alchemy, I really love it, and it really helps put it into perspective.
The second phase of alchemical transformation is albedo, which means whitening. Albedo represents the process of spiritual purification, the burning out of impurities from the salt or hardened ego. The salt in this step is reduced into quicksilver or mercury, which represents fluidity, and the process of rapid mental, emotional, and spiritual change, and the strengthening of the sacred feminine essence, leading to the engagement of the imagination. The only substance, the only essence from which the elixir of life, or the awakened or enlightened mind, can then be made. This is why the dark occult want to stamp out the human imagination, because they don't want the process of transformation to happen in our species. This step is about when people start to learn the truth and are accepting of it. They have the mindset of openness and reception. Again, the date today is no accident. Highly synchromistic. 10-4. Reception. I got it. I get it. I've heard it. 10-4. Okay? No accident. No such thing. As soon as Art suggested the date, I said, I love it. It's all about reception. So, this step is the awakening process, the awakening step. It's when we recognize the world isn't what we thought it was, and we start developing a desire for more than the base things in life. We start developing a desire to know the truth, the desire to reach higher realms of consciousness, the desire to better ourselves and be better than we were the day before. When we're going to start working upon ourselves by taking in the truth and letting go of beliefs and letting go of impurities in our thought processes and bringing our consciousness into alignment with truth and with morality. That's this step of the process. Whitening, purification, the burning out of impurities. It's a beautiful allegory if it's properly understood. The third and final phase of the alchemical, quote, great work is rubedo. Rubedo means reddening. The transmutation into gold or sulfur, alchemical substances, gold or sulfur. And they represented purified and enlightened consciousness. The elemental fire of the philosopher's stone. Again, that's why it was symbolized by a red elixir. Often the philosopher's stone was depicted as a red stone itself. And that represented the unification of man, which was the limited being, with the divine will, often represented by a red color as well, the unlimited. So it's a paradox in terms. It's the microcosm joining with the macrocosm. It's man as the limited being in the physical domain having a spiritual learning experience here in the physical world, coming into union with the divine spark or essence, the unlimited force inherent in nature. That's alchemy in a nutshell. Very simple explanation of the allegorical tradition. Again, this is rudimentary work meant to whet the appetite of the student.
So that's a really important one. I really encourage people to go and watch that again. There's a lot to be understood in that video there, because until we actually step into that space where we start seeing past our own immediate gain, we are going to stay limited. And that's the trap, right? That's the trap that majority of people have fallen for. They just think about themselves, what they can get for now, and what they can accumulate, because they believe that life's quality is in the accumulation, right? And they must clutch at it. And while you stay in that space, you are going to remain limited. That's why they gave us bread and circuses, guys, right? That's the point, to keep us limited. And the only way to be unlimited is to step up into that space where we unify with that which preserves us, right? And then we step into our divine spiritual nature. That's when we become unlimited, where we stop acting for ourselves and we start acting for the greater good of all, because we are part of the all. So we are in service of the all. We are one little cog in that all. And we all need to do our bit to lubricate that cog, that one massive cog. So that's why I love that video.
Defense of objective morality requires you to reconnect with the inherent knowledge that resides in every fiber of your being, informing you that your fate on this planet is connected to the fate of others in order to overcome the allure and seduction of I want and reattach to your innate intelligence that activates the care and will required to delay immediate sensate gratification in order to fulfill your higher purpose of contributing to the quality of life on this planet.
Yep, so that's pretty much what I said a moment ago. So, this is our actual purpose, guys. And until we all step in there and join each other, right, we're going to remain fragmented, and we're going to be dominated, and eventually it's going to be unsustainable, and we're already on that precipice. So this is about that alchemical process, guys. And the oath is the only way that exists by which government is held account for their action. There's no other, right? That Article 61, the oath to upholding the laws of universal morality. There's no other one that exists, right? And that can be proven. So that's what it truly means, guys. This is nothing about what I'm going to get for myself today. It's about standing on principle and not shifting. That's why we don't fight fascists, because we fight them because we stand on principle.
Yeah.
And that's what this statement means.
The one who plants trees knowing that he will never sit in their shade has at least started to understand the meaning of life.
So if you can really get that statement, then you won't need any direction by anybody else. You will be self-directed and in that space where you are in charge of your own decisions. But if you don't understand that statement for its true meaning, you are always going to be under the direction of someone else, believing that you are in charge of your decisions.
Sadly so. Fitz, what a show. Thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah, so we just got a few announcements to get through, and then we're done. So I'm hoping you guys are still awake and alert, and we can get through these announcements. And it'll be done for next week. And start getting your questions out, guys, because whatever you want to ask me, it's going to be answered. So, anything you don't understand or you want to challenge, feel free to throw them forward.
All right. Is that the first one we wanted up?
Yeah, the Freedom
Knowledge
Fighter.
Center. Yep, Freedom Fighter. I've already posted the Knowledge Center. If you're in the comments, folks, I'll just post them again now. Knowledge Center connection on Telegram has just gone up.
Yeah, so this is one we've done before, the Freedom Fighter, but in hindsight, or like inside of what we've done tonight, it's just going to actually just reinforce, what all that knowledge we've been sharing tonight, to really understand, what a true Freedom Fighter is, not the imagined version, the one that mixes methods, doesn't understand principle. It's all about self-indulgence. There's so many people that call themselves common law advocates, but all they're doing is repeating slavery without either being aware of it or doing it deliberately to get something out of it, right? So it's one or the other. And either way, the outcome's the same, right? Because if you don't have self-awareness, you're just as dangerous, or if not more, than the one who's doing something deliberately.
Yeah.
Because the ones who don't have self-awareness, they're the ones you can't deal with. Like, they're just impossible to deal with. So yeah, this is just a wonderful one. Did you want to read it, or are you happy for me to, Carl?
You can. I'm just trying to set up your next one.
All right, too easy. So a freedom fighter has a moral compass, right? And it's directed from a place of neutrality, not for any self-serving needs. So at which point, while you're being forced off the cliff, do you draw the line and finally stand on principle? Like, how many people have really asked themselves that question? Not because you expect to win. Remember what we talked about tonight about win or losing. That's not a paradigm that exists in nature. That's one that we're controlled into believing is natural. But because you chose to defend that which is eternal and inextinguishable, upon which the very fabric of existence is built. therefore not up for negotiation. That's what you defend when you take an oath to Article 61, that which is not up for negotiation. Do you want your last breath spent on submission to fear and comfort? So anyone who wants self-gain, they are coming from a place of fear, whether you like it or not. These are evidence facts. Or in defense of the universal principles of morality upon which our shared fate of this planet is dependent. The sooner more people understand that it's the compromise of morality for comfort that's got us to this precipice, the sooner our self-inflicted suffering ends. So things all we covered tonight are all in this one, guys. So this one's available on the channel that Carl just gave us a link to, the MC 1215 Knowledge AU, Knowledge Center AU. You can find all these up there. So if you want to share them, right? But now if you've watched this, hopefully you'd understand it to explain it to someone else. So here it says to act in service of morality is to bring freedom to reality. The collective adherence to the universal principles of morality is the unifying force that dissolves fear, neutralizes evil, and cultivates freedom, right? And then just talks about the Magna Carta 1215 is the moral agreement that binds government to act in the service of the people. So then if you want to understand more, you come to the channel, and Carl's already put that link up.
Then there's the police conduct card.
Yep, we've done it before. Just a quick one, guys. That's also available in the Knowledge Center as well. It's part of our protection tools. So it's all connected to the caution card as well. So these are just questions that, you can have on you, like a little card you can have on you to ask, when you're being pulled over or is being stopped by these policy enforcement agents, these immoral men and women that have weapons, and see what they do. So I heard a story just the other week about someone who was being threatened. This was amazing. I couldn't believe it, right? That they were being told by six, they were surrounded by six of these policy enforcement agents, and they're really burly blokes, right? Saying that if they don't get out of the car, that they're going to be dragged out and taken to the station and have their young children left in the car. And it was after midnight. Could you imagine who would do such a thing? Use that level of threat to get someone to actually comply. So you see how bad this gets, right? These are terrorists. Who would terrorize someone to that point where they would say that their children are going to be left alone in a vehicle at night in the dark, right? What do you think the next thing would do if that individual complied? The very next thing that will happen is child protection will be down there, and they'd lose their kids forever, saying that they were a bad parent. You see what these police officers do? It was just, I couldn't believe it. I was just dumbfounded. I didn't know that they could go that low, right? Anyway, when they had a friend show up, they started asking questions like, taking names. The two biggest ones just got in their car and drove off. Right? Then the others, right, they started panicking. They didn't know what to do. Eventually, it was like a scene from the Keystone Cops. They started banging into each other trying to get in their cars to leave. So this is what happens when we start challenging their authority, guys, right? We don't go into this, do I have the right to remain silent? We don't do that, guys. If you ask that question, right, you are telling them they have an authority to decide on what you can and can't do. You never ask those kind of questions, right? You always ask questions of their authority to prove it. And this is a way to do it so you don't have to think, right? And that's available in the Knowledge Center as well, guys. So just thought I'd put that up. And then we've got the one that we've shown before. This is the social proof channel. I think Carl's put the link up as well, where we really need to start getting this information out to people, but that requires people with courage to call up these fake courts and the police stations. And we've got created a script. So you can do it, guys. You don't have to do any thinking. Just have to call them up, ask the questions, and have it recording, right? So we can have this channel where your normie mates can have proof, because the more of us that actually do this, because how do people start believing something? It has to be repeated, right? So if you are in one suburb, in one town, and then someone else is from another, and you're getting the same responses, right? The normies are going to start seeing, hang on a second, what's happening here, right? So we've got to have a channel that stores all this data, right? So we need people with courage who've got the will to go make these calls. It's not difficult, right? There's nothing to fear here, because you're just making inquiries. That's all you're doing, and you're just recording them and seeing how far you get, and to show you just how far from public servants these people are. And the normies need to understand this. So we need to do the work for them, guys. If we're awake, that's a responsibility that falls on us. No one else is going to do it for us. So we're looking for people who have the courage to follow through and act in the service of what they say they seek. That's the point of these channels that have been set up, guys. They're not so you can get a win just for now. They are doing what's going to benefit all humanity for eternity. If you have the courage and you have the connection to that space, then come step forward and show others how it's done.
Awesome stuff, mate. Bloody great show. Thoroughly enjoyed it tonight. Absolutely. Learned a ton of it.
Yeah, so I'm really pleased, guys. So like I said, guys, if there's things in here that you didn't understand, start noting them down and email them over to fitz@vofhq.com. Or if you want to do a video version or a voice recording, then carl@vofhq.com, guys, because it would be wonderful to be able to answer your questions next week. And really sort of, anything that you're not sure about or you want to challenge as well, I'll take that as well. Feel free to come forward and let us know what it is.
And just from a video or audio perspective, if you don't want to get your face on and you don't know how to make an audio recording, just make a video recording, but don't put your head on it. Get us a nice outlook. Go and show the paddocks or what you're doing today. Rest in the park, look at the birds in the trees just while you ask your question. You don't have to put your head on it if you don't want to, but we're happy to put your head on if you want to. That would be the easiest way. Send those to me at carl@vofhq.com, and please make sure that they are no longer than 90 seconds in length. I won't be able to upload them otherwise. So you might have trouble sending something. They must also be MP4 videos. If you can send them MP4, that will make life a lot easier. And send all that to me, carl@vofhq.com. Fitz, loving your work, brother.
Yeah, well, it was wonderful to be back after a bit of a break. So it was a bit rusty, but I'm starting to get my wings back. So it was wonderful to get back into it. I look forward to your questions, guys, next week. So please do start going over the shows if you want to come and really learn and solidify your knowledge. That's what the Q&A is for. So just encourage you to really step forward, guys, and see if there's any more help you need. I'm more than willing to answer your questions.
Great, mate. Thank you. Look forward to seeing you next week. Well,
okay,
as
always.
Not seeing you is the case.
We'll take that figuratively, shall we?
Figuratively. We'll give it a go. Good on you, mate.
All right.
Talk to you then.
Shall do. Good night, everybody.
And tomorrow, folks, got another show for you lined up tomorrow. Going to be a good one. Whole heap of very interesting sort of political maneuvers happening at the moment. And I'm keeping a bit of an eye on them. Of course, always trying to keep an eye on what's going on supposedly in the white hat world. And, there are things certainly happening. McCarthy becoming the Speaker of the House. Don't think that fight's done yet. Keep watching this space. There's a few other interesting things that are going to come up in the next few days. I think once that new Congress is sworn in and everybody starts attempting to try and do a little bit of work, there is going to be some very interesting actions taken on committees, and those committees are currently being fought for behind the scenes, particularly the chairmanship of one, and that would be the Armed Services Committee. There is a big battle going on behind the scenes there at the moment, and I think Matt Gaetz might wind up with the chairmanship out of it. Anyway, we'll talk about more of that tomorrow. Have yourself a great night. I'm glad you enjoyed Magna Carta 12:15, lesson number 26 in our Learning Centre tonight. And Fitz is back with the Q&A next week. As I've got the crawl going up there, hopefully you've got the addresses down, but if you want to send Fitz a question just via email, fitz@vofhq.com. Send a video to me. If you don't want to put your head on it, that's fine. It's just easier for me to handle videos rather than just audio. Make sure it's an MP4. Make sure it's not more than 90 seconds long. carl@vofhq.com. Love your work, folks. Talk to you tomorrow. Have a great night.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay?